أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين. So tonight we're going to talk about the concept of comparative research and analysis and how the Qur'an, as we talked about in the last two nights, demonstrates its authority and its capacity as a resource. Because if you don't know the evidence and somebody says, yeah, but the Bible says, and the Bible was there long before Muhammad, and so Muhammad's just some illiterate guy in the desert saying stuff randomly, and we've had in the Bible and Christianity and Judaism all these ideas, who is he to differ? You see? But if you have the evidence, then you can say, I'll tell you who he is to differ. But are you that person? And that's why we're talking. نزل عليك الكتاب بالحق مصدقا لما بين يديه وأنزل التوراة والإنجيل. We have sent down this message with the truth as a confirmation of previous scriptures that were sent to previous prophets. And we revealed the Torah, we revealed the gospel. So the Torah was given to Moses, the gospel was given to Jesus. So you will find missionaries with pamphlets already made out. Your Qur'an here in chapter 3, verse number 3 says that you believe in the Bible, right? Then what are you going to do in that case? It says here, the Torah and the Gospel. And they're saying, here's the Bible, the Torah and the Gospel. Why aren't you believing in this? Huh? In Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse number 13, يُحَرِّفُونَ الْكَلِمَ عَمَّ مَوَاضِعِهِ وَنَسُوا حَظًّا مِمَّا ذُكِّرُوا بِهِ. You have to know Ma'idah. If you don't know Ma'idah, now they've got you. You see what I'm saying? And so, Ma'idah says, they have distorted and changed the scriptures, and they forgot a lot of it. You see? And that comes up in Surah An-Nisa, Surah Al-Baqarah, and Surah Al-Ma'idah. So it is very well documented in the Qur'an that their scriptures have changed over time. Guess what agrees with that? All archaeological science and all of their own. If you go to Encyclopedia Britannica and you look up what mainstream historians and anthropologists and archaeologists say about who wrote what in the Bible, they will tell you, we don't really know, and this is a lot of problems and where that came from and what time it was written and what language it was translated from and so forth. Did Jesus speak Greek? Jesus was a Greek guy. No. Guess what? Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, all of those things referencing Jesus' teachings in his life, in what language? It's in Greek. He spoke Aramaic. According to who? According to all historians, Christian, Jew, Muslim, everyone, right? So if the scriptural reference they have is in Greek and Jesus was speaking in Aramaic, don't we have a disparage right here? You see? So we need a reference point. So even with that, we don't just say all Jews and Christians are misguided, the Bible is false. You can't say that. Why? Because Allah told you they are Ahl al-Kitab, people with scriptures. الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابِ. And the Qur'an tells us to ask Ahl al-Kitab what they have with them. You see, which is meaning they still have lots of the scripture is correct. It is still intact. Just some of it has been distorted and some of it has been lost, right? And so the Qur'an is coming down to clarify that. For this reason, in the early commentaries from Abdullah bin Abbas himself, when he first met convert Christians, he used statements they would say about their gospel to interpret things about Jesus. And he would write that in his commentary. Ibn Kathir perhaps is the most common commentary in every Muslim household. Ibn Kathir has Isra'iliyat Kathira. Isra'iliyat is a phrase meaning Christian and Jewish commentaries from their scriptures on the Qur'an. Ibn Kathir put that in there. Why? Because the Qur'an and the Prophet ﷺ never prohibited doing that. It just said, make sure you know the reference point in order to verify. So the Qur'an and the Sunnah tell us that أنزلنا إليك الكتاب بالحق مصدقا لما بين يديه من الكتاب ومهيمنا عليه. We have revealed you this book with the truth as a confirmation of previous scriptures, and this book serves as the authoritative reference point. Why? Because of the last 2 days we talked, the Qur'an has been proven to have the facts that are now proven with science that this is what actually happened, whereas the Bible was having mistaken reference points of what happened before. And there is nothing that has been found in the Qur'an that is somehow incorrect or mistaken. Actually, the times they tried to do that, which we'll talk about later when we talk about scientific facts, they also had the slam dunk. Your Qur'an is saying that the sun is in an orbit. And so all the scientists were in agreement for so long, until the 1970s, okay? Until Stephen Hawking said, no, according to my calculations, the sun and the Milky Way is in the center of the solar system going around the Milky Way circular. So the sun is what? In an orbit. But see, they thought they were slam dunking on us when they said the sun is still, right? Your Qur'an is saying the sun is orbiting. And then later it came. We have many, many, many examples of this, right? Again, coming to an illiterate man in the middle of the desert who has no knowledge of science, and even if he had all the knowledge of the science in the world, nobody would have known these things anyways. So let's take one story to understand that there is some serious differences and there is some serious issues to be solved. We were sitting in a youth group and I was asking the teenage Muslims who are born and raised Muslim, all of them. And I asked them what kind of a being was Iblis. And they all said, what? An angel. This is a Christian and a Jewish belief. The Qur'an is very clear. كَانَ مِنَ الْجِنِّ فَفَسَقَ عَنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّهِ. You're supposed to be reading this every Friday, okay? It's in Surah Al-Kahf. You see what I'm saying? But if we're just reading, we don't know what we're reading, and we're not talking about it, we're not studying it, we're not taking beliefs from it, then we might find ourselves going along with the general mentality of our environment. So those of you who are thinking parenting is just simply tell them that everything's haram, we believe right, we're right, those are kuffar, I'm telling you right now, we are losing the game with this thought process. It takes a whole lot more hands-on discussions, and you yourself will need to become vulnerable. You see, you grew up in a society where everybody's Muslim, everything's Muslim, we know this is the truth. Now you are in a society very different. Now you're going to have to become a knowledge seeker. You're going to be some talib ilm, right? Every Muslim here has to be a carrier of the risala, right? Because these people are mostly ignorant of Islam. And so it's important for us to look at the story of Adam and Iblis and what happened. So the story that God commanded the angels and Iblis, the jinn, to bow down in respect to the honor of Adam is not anywhere in the Bible. It's not there. The story of Adam and Eve is Adam was created, Eve was created, they were told not to go to the tree. All the rest of the story is there. But the story of bow down in honor and respect to Adam is not there. You do find that this story is actually written in Jewish and Christian writings in different scriptures and different references that they have. And you know what they write? All of them say is that God created Adam in his image. And that God created, and for that reason, listen to what they wrote in their books. The angels, the reason why they were bowing down is because they thought Adam was God and they was worshiping him. And guess what? In their tradition, God did not go against them. He didn't rebuke them for that. That's the Christian understanding. Because the Christians are saying Adam is the precursor to Jesus, who will be God in the flesh. And you see, they have their own beliefs they have, right? And so the Jewish tradition is saying, yeah, it was that Adam was telling all of them to bow down, and then Iblis was saying, I don't have to bow down because I came before him. Similar, right? So you have different ideas. The Qur'an is clear that the angel do not have choice. Angels do not make decisions on their own. They were given a responsibility. They don't moralize it. They don't philosophize, what should I do? I feel like I don't want to do, and all of that. That's a human behavior. So according to Islam and Judaism, that is correct. Christians are in complete difference with this. All Christianity, every single sect says the angels can lose their way. They can be misguided and they can fall. And Iblis fell, right? And so the Jews justify Iblis' behavior in that Iblis would become someone who would challenge human beings and test them in their faith. And that's his job, that God wanted him to do, right? Because he stood out challenging this issue. So we know that the Prophet ﷺ, he taught us that the jinns are created from fire, and the angels are created from light, and the human from the earth. According to Jews, they have some Jews that are saying that angels are created from fire, and some are created from ice. And the Christians are saying that they're all created from fire. So different beliefs here. We're seeing very distinct beliefs coming from these traditions. So the Qur'an is, now again, if you're Muhammad and you're supposed to be some false prophet, right? You're going to be very careful before you start presenting things that can be proven wrong, because you know you're making stuff up. You see what I'm saying? The one argument that they're making is Muhammad just, heard from somebody and said everything, but there are so many things that differ with both of them. One differ with one and agrees with the other, and one agrees with that and not the other. And yet the Prophet ﷺ never narrated to be sitting with and having conversations with these people. And if he had, those people would not have been speaking Arabic to him, because there was no reference of Bibles in Arabic according to the Bible scholars until 100 some odd years after Muhammad, as a response to try to convert Arabs on a large scale to the Christian teachings. So we have to have a basis, whether it comes from the theological differences or whether it comes from the scientific evidence. Because one thing that I'm seeing our college crowd is losing their way completely, because atheism is being indoctrinated into them by middle school. My son was telling me how they were teaching mythology in 9th grade literature. And they were teaching about mythologies of the world. And they put Greek, Zeus and Hercules and all of that. And then they said these are the mythologies of Jews and Christians and Muslims. As though that's all Tooth Fairy and Santa Claus. You see? So this is coming to them from that mindset. You see what I'm saying? And so then in college it's even highly much more emphasized, because then everybody's going into a college and acting like smart animals in the dorms and the sororities and the fraternities. You see? And so we have to have both the theological clarity of explaining the differences and the why and what our evidence is, and bringing the scientific facts that support us historically and modern in order to present this message. It's not just a matter of our beliefs make sense and yours don't, and we're right and you're wrong. Nobody's going to go for this type of thought process. This is just people's opinions versus people's opinions. We have to become solid in our capacity to preserve and promote Islam to the world, because if we don't, then we'll have failed, and on the day of judgment, each one's going to ask. Allah is going to ask, He send the angel, I got you in this place where all these people were, where there was all kinds of opportunity for you to gain greatness for Islam. And what did you do? He said, I made a lot of money. And my kids went to the greatest college, they got PhD and this and that and the other. So we ask Allah to reaffirm our hearts on the straight path of the Holy Qur'an, and to give us al-hujjat al-baligha, that the Qur'an will be approved for us and not against us on the day of judgment. جزاكم الله خيرا. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين. Tonight we're moving on into the notion of the miraculous legislative teachings of the Holy Qur'an. The Qur'an tells us in Surah Al-Isra, إن هذا القرآن يهدي للتي هي أقوم ويبشر المؤمنين الذين يعملون الصالحات أن لهم أجرا كبيرا. Truly this recitation, this message, this revelation guides to that which is the best of behavior. And the word here is aqwam. So aqwam is talking about that which will bring something to its potential, that which will bring something up and give it its best, most upright positioning. And so this is the Qur'an's claim that its teachings will guide to more, better, upright, higher standard of character than other teachings. And so now we put that to the test. That is a claim. The transformation of Arabia in and of itself, in its entirety, over 23 years, by itself closed the book on that. You're talking about a whole nation of people who went from polytheism to monotheism. Complete opposites. People who believed in all kinds of superstitions to the belief in divine will according to divine plan. People who believed that women have no value and that we should bury babies, to prohibiting all of that and treating women like the equals of men in humanity. It was a lawless society with no judges, no courts, no governance, no king, no ruler, no police. all of that was changed and all of those were put in place. And the list goes on and on and on. But I want to talk tonight specifically about alcohol. So there are other religions. There is a religion known as Jainism. There's a religion known as Buddhism. There is a religion known as Sikhism and Baha'ism. All of these have given a prohibition to alcohol, but none of them maintained it. There is none of those where if you were to go around the society to the broad community and ask them, is alcohol something that nobody should ever do at all, ever? You will get a majority of them saying, well, it's better not to. And you will see their societies are plagued with all kinds of problems of alcoholism. You will find just a small diehard minority. Among the Muslim community, you will find the person who doesn't really pray, the person who takes interest in all of that, person who's got a girlfriend or boyfriend, and you ask them, can a Muslim drink? And what will that person say? No. They will all agree. No matter what, this is haram. We know it. This is bad. This is not acceptable. Alcohol, even in small amounts, causes brain damage. It causes liver damage. It causes pancreas damage. It causes kidney damage. It lowers the immune system's capacity. And it is the cause of many cancers. Alcohol worsens any mental health issues that anyone has. If someone already is struggling with a mental health issue, when they drink alcohol, it compounds and makes that problem worse. Alcohol, just drinking a lot of it, it actually creates in the person anxiety problems. It creates in the person depression problems. And there are people who've either lived around alcoholics or drank a lot with other people that became bipolar. And a large percentage of the people who drink a lot have sleep disorders. 37% of all crime in America in 2023 was because of someone drinking alcohol. Look at that. If you just remove alcohol, you will lower the crime by what? 37%. Acts of violence are doubled. Over 60% of violent actions that person was involved in drinking or in a place where people drink. 700,000 college students last year reported an assault, a physical assault at college because of someone drinking alcohol. 700,000 just last year. 100,000 of those were females reporting sexual assaults. Drunk drivers account for 31% of all fatalities on the road. You see, if we look at this, if we took alcohol out of America, it would solve and make so much, make the place a better place to live. It will make the crime rate go down, the college life will be better. Who remembers the Qatar World Cup? I'm telling you, many people converted to Islam and stopped drinking simply because they realized that just taking alcohol out of the World Cup, it made it so much more genuinely enjoyable. And then when they went home, they actually remembered their time. Yeah, that's what they were saying. See, they just need a little sharia, right? They put a big number on us to make us feel like we should be shy about saying, this country is better off with sharia. This is a fact. This is a scientific fact. I'm telling you the numbers. The Islamic law is better for this country than its own law. Didn't it try it? The great American Constitution. There's a lot of good things in there. Alhamdulillah, it brought us here. Alhamdulillah, gave us these freedoms. But they tried in the 18th Amendment what? Prohibition. The United States government, only what is it, 29 amendments? In the whole 300-year history, they were able to make 29 laws in the Constitution, right? 27? Jazakallah khair, high school students, always there for you. You will forget it in 10 years. So we have 27 laws in the whole 300 years. The 18th, 2/3 of all of Congress, Democrat, Republican, everyone, they all said alcohol is bad, it is wrong, it is harmful, it is ruining the minds, it is ruining the lives and careers and families of people. We must prohibit it. And they prohibited it. And that lasted 14 years. And through that 14 years, all of the mafia and the mobs and the gangs from Latin America coming through, and all of the FBI and the police are all in on the whole thing. They weren't able to prohibit it because they are not Allah. The only one to prohibit alcohol anywhere on earth is Allah. Could Muhammad do it himself? No, because he is not the one who wrote the Qur'an. He is not the one that spoke the Qur'an. So let's look at how Allah did this. In the early parts of the Meccan ayat from Surah Al-Nahl, what is it? جَعَلَ لَكُمْ سَكَرًا وَرِزْقًا, right? That you enjoy it, you feel good, and you make some money out of it. Allah said that in the Qur'an, because it's true. And then Allah said, just after the migration, yeah, but there's some bad in it. There's more harm in the good. You should see that it will cause more problems than it could do you any good. And then after a couple more years, he said, don't ever come to a salah if you've been drinking. Make sure that that goes out of you, and you know, because your salah must have your mind in it. Which again is a reason why you have to know what you're saying when you're praying. It's unacceptable to be praying and you don't know what you're saying, as the ayah says. And then a few years later, Allah said, فَاجْتَنِبُوا, stay away from alcohol. It is amal al-shaytan. It is the filthy handiwork of the devil. Stay away from it. And what happened? So Anas bin Malik was in the house of one of the very wealthy Sahaba, Abu Talha, one of the very famous Sahaba who was very wealthy. And Anas bin Malik, his mom actually married him. And so he was pouring wine in the house for the people, Anas bin Malik, right? And all these Sahaba were drinking, because a lot of them did drink, because it was not haram yet, okay? And so then the person comes to the door and he says, this brother looking at me like, what? I never heard that seerah. It's true, okay? Listen to Umar Suleiman's tonight. He tell you that Umar was a drunk, okay? Yeah, why is that bad? That's an amazing transformation. This is more evidence that Islam is the truth. It changes people to a better behavior. So they got this ayah, and you know what Abu Talha said? When they heard the ayah, they know this is Qur'an. They said, take this wine out. Everybody poured it back in the jug, and they went out and they immediately poured it out. And not one person in that house drank another drip in their life. Just like that. And that is the miraculous nature of the Qur'an as it touched the human beings. There are only 9 countries on planet Earth where alcohol is prohibited. And they are all Muslim countries. And in those countries, the crime rate is massively lower than all of the other countries. And that is because Allah is the one who is guiding us. That's just one thing that He told us. If we will simply follow as much as we possibly can and read this Qur'an and soak up its guidance, then we will become better people, we will become upright, and our environments will become upright. So may Allah guide us to make this Qur'an a proof for us and not against us on the Day of Judgment, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين. We're talking about how the Qur'an is miraculous in many facets. إن هذا القرآن يهدي الذي هي أقوم. Truly this Qur'an guides to that which is better, that which is more upright. It is able to guide people to the best ways of living. So the Qur'an is defining itself as the best model for defining conduct and modeling people and nurturing them to have that conduct. Tonight we're going to talk about the subject of race. It's very easy to just take concepts for granted and not to compare how the world looks compared to the teachings of Islam. I want to introduce you to Sir Alexander Gibb. Alexander Gibb was a professor at Harvard University, and he was the director of the Center for Middle East Studies in the year 1957. He wrote a book called Whither Islam in 1932. On page 39 he says, Islam has a great service to render to the cause of humanity. It stands, after all, nearer to the real East than Europe does, and it possesses a magnificent tradition of interracial understanding and cooperation. No other society has such a record of success in uniting in an equal of status and opportunity and endeavors for so many different ethnicities among humanity. Islam still has the power to reconcile apparently irreconcilable elements of race and tradition. If ever the opposition of the great societies of the East and the West is to be replaced with cooperation, the mediation of Islam is an indispensable condition. This is a British professor who mastered the Arabic language, spent many years in the Middle East, and then became professor of Islamic studies in various institutions. And his idea was, out of all of planet Earth, this race and caste mentality, the one thing that can solve it is Islam. And Islam comes from the Qur'an. A.J. Toynbee, he was elected a fellow of the British Academy of Humanities and Social Sciences in 1937. He was elected to the International Society of Philosophy in 1941 and an international honorary member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. He wrote a book called Civilization on Trial, in which he defends the beauty of Islam against its opponents. He's a non-Muslim. He's a secular guy. He has no dog in the fight, as they say. He's not Christian. He's not Muslim. He's on the outside as a secular studying, telling what he sees. He says, the extinction of the race consciousness between Muslims is one of the outstanding achievements of Islam, and in the contemporary world there is, as it happens, a crying need for the propagation of this Islamic virtue. And I'll give you the last quote here is from R.L. Malema from Holland. Actually, he was an anthropologist and a writer, but through his study of Islam, he converted to Islam. And he said, the doctrine of brotherhood in Islam extends to all human beings, no matter what color, race, or creed. Islam is the only religion which has been able to realize this doctrine in practice. He's telling you with his own mouth, as an anthropologist who studied world civilizations and the human condition. He's saying Islam, coming from the Qur'an, is the only thing on earth that has the ability to solve the race conflict problem. Meaning, the Qur'an is the only entity that has that ability, which is what a miracle is defined by. Only one person can do it, and it cannot be reproduced by others. That's the definition of a miracle. It starts in Surah Al-Isra, where God says, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. In the royal we, with emphasis, لَقَدْ, for sure, without doubt, we have honored the human being, the children of Adam. So the idea that we have, our faith tradition, what our actual beliefs are, is each and every human being is born with a sense of respect and dignity, and they are all born with a clean, equal slate. Those hearts that incline to faith, those sincere words and actions that reflect faith, which God is the judge of that, will be better than others. But nobody else has that business, which is why Allah said in Surah Al-Najm, فَلَا تُزَكُّوا أَنفُسَكُمْ هُوَ أَعْلَمُ بِمَنِ اتَّقَى. Don't claim for yourself, I'm special and I know so much and I'm the one. Let Allah, let God judge that matter. So we have throughout the Qur'an, Ya ayyuhan nas, O humanity, pay attention humanity. We have Ya ayyuhal insan, O human being. We have this notion of humanity as a fundamental relationship with Allah in the Qur'an. And we recited in Salat al-Isha, who remembers? Hujurat. وَجَعَلْنَا Ya ayyuhan nas, O humanity, we have created you all from male and female. And then we've made you into many different tribes and nations for the purpose that you could come to get to know one another. Meaning what? Your differences, your ethnicities, its purpose is that you will learn things from people with different backgrounds and experiences all over the earth. And so this is the coming together of humanity in its differences, in its diversity. Islam is the original DEI manual. Okay? And so then he says, Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. Again, he emphasizes so nobody would begin to think, well, I'm better because I'm male and she's female, so she's under me. No, it doesn't work that way. Aisha and many others, way better than most of us men. Okay? And so maybe somebody thinks, well, I have white skin, so that means I must be better. Or I am wealthy and I have this PhD, or I come from this tribe, or whatever. None of that means anything. Inna akramakum indallah. The most honorable and noble among you are the most pious. And then what does he say after that? Inna Allah alimun khabir. And God is the one who knows and is aware of who is pious and who is not. So don't claim it for yourself again. And then it all goes back to the beautiful signs in creation. In Surah Ar-Rum, in chapter 30, verse 22, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ خَلْقُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. In Arabic, this is a am, and then after it will be a khas. And the point, meaning there's a generality from the signs of God, things that will help you know about God, things that will help you draw nearer to God in His signs in creation, is the whole creation of the heavens and the earth. خَلْقُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. So He brings the most general thing possible, and now He's going to bring you a specific point to focus on that you as human beings will take a huge lesson from. وَاخْتِلَافُ أَلْسِنَتِكُمْ وَأَلْوَانِكُمْ. And the differences in your languages and in your skin colors. Those are Allah's signs. Those are the beauty of Allah in creation. All languages, all colors of skin, all cultures, all ethnicities are equally the beauty of Allah's creation. Right? And so that idea, then He says, إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِلْعَالِمِينَ. And that is a sign for those who know. Meaning those who pay attention to the beauty. If you section yourself off, and so there are many teachings from the Prophet that expound vastly on these ayat. But the Prophet ﷺ said, and I want to reiterate this for the millionth time, and we can never end it until we see we fix it. That, أَلَا أَبَالُ دَعْوَ جَاهِلِيَّةٍ. Why would you bring this ways of ignorance? دَعُوهَا فَإِنَّهَا مُنْتِنَةٌ. This tribalism, this nationalism, this racism, leave it. It's putrefying. Stay away from it. This idea that my ethnicity or my nationalistic group, my state, right, my group is somehow special and I only stay among my group. These ayahs and these hadith that we're talking about are telling you don't do that. That will limit you. It will make you narrow-minded. It will make you closed-minded. You will not have a good understanding of your role as a human being amongst the humanity of which we are all a family. There is only one race in the Qur'an. And what is that race? The human race. The notion of races, meaning separate, distinct types of humans from biological things, is nonsense. It was created for capitalistic purposes of controlling peoples and taking their resources and making wealth. There are different ethnicities, there are different skin tones, cultures, but there's one humanity. And everybody's equally a human being on this planet, right? So we ask Allah to enrich us in the Qur'an, that we may carry this message and not carry the message of our colonizers who tried to make us like them. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه فإنه هو الغفور. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Continuing in the miraculous nature of the Qur'an and the elements of the Qur'an that prove it to be something above and beyond any other text or teaching or legal code in the history of humanity. This is not just something we say because we believe it, because our family said with this a holy book and we kiss it. It's actually the overwhelming facts keep piling up. The more you study it, the more you see it. And that's why it's important for a Muslim to not just be a Muslim by name or a Muslim by heritage, but a Muslim by conviction and knowledge. إِنَّ هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ يَهْدِي لِلَّتِي هِيَ أَقْوَمُ وَيُبَشِّرُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ الَّذِينَ يَعْمَلُونَ الصَّالِحَاتِ أَنَّ لَهُمْ أَجْرًا كَبِيرًا. Truly this Qur'an is guiding to the most upright of behavior. It is guiding to the model of behavior that will improve upon humanity and bring them to their potential. And that is a challenge that the Qur'an is making, because it's saying better than any other teaching. We will talk today about the elevation of the status of women. Now on this one, maybe it didn't maintain the actual what's in the script, and people may have went back to their old ways. I'm sure the ladies know what I'm talking about. But in the time that the Qur'an was being revealed, until this day, conservative, Orthodox, Haredi, Hasidic Jewish men, in what is like their Fajr prayer, their morning prayer, they say, "Blessed you, O Lord our God, we thank you for not creating us a woman." Yeah. And we're the oppressors, right? Christian theologians, they have written in their books maybe women don't really have a soul. Maybe they're just here to test us like other animals that we struggle with. Maybe women are all just naturally evil. If we go back to the Bible story in Genesis, it comes right after eating from the tree. Right after Adam and Eve ate from the tree, it says, now God is speaking, God said to the woman, I will greatly multiply your pain in childbearing. In pain you will bring your children forth. And you shall live to serve your husband, and he will rule over you. That's every Bible. Every Bible in the world says this as the punishment for Eve. Because the story reads in the Bible that the snake, serpent, shaitan, Iblis character said, hey, Eve, knowing she's easy bait. Eve, come over here. This is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You will have all of this. Come here. And she was really hungry and she said, okay. And she went for it. And then she went to her husband and said, here, you should eat this. And so she enticed him and seduced him and corrupted him. And that's how the Bible reads. And so according to Christianity and Judaism, God punished all women for the action of one woman named Eve, according to their belief. That childbearing and the pains of labor is a punishment on all of you. And so this is the kind of belief system. The Qur'an does not have any blame on Eve anywhere. Actually, it blames Adam in the Qur'an. فَعَصَى آدَمُ رَبَّهُ فَغَوَى. Adam disobeyed his Lord and he was deviated. وَلَمْ نَجِدْ لَهُ عَزْمًا. Adam was given the covenant and he was not able to stick with determination on the straight path. He ate from the tree. Every other reference beside those two references says they both went to the tree. They both ate from the tree and they both fell from grace. Historically, they saw women as property. The 10th commandment, you're familiar with the 10 commandments? The 10th of all the 10, number 10 of them, it says, do not seek to have your neighbor's wife. Do not seek to have your neighbor's donkey. Don't seek to have your neighbor's goods and their ox. Do not seek to have any of your neighbor's property. So what was mentioned in the property? The wife. Which is why, historically, Christian women take the name of their husband when they get married. Just like slaves took the name of their masters. That's why you have a lot of black people named Washington, Jefferson, right? This is the thing. And so we don't have that thing. And so that is because we have this liberation in the Qur'an. Arabs too saw women as property. They had the same idea. Actually, they saw women as a big burden. For many, the feeling of disgrace of a baby girl being born and seeing that she's a girl, this father with no shame in his heart will dig up a hole and bury her and put her in there. And that was a very common practice among non-noble Arabs. Then Allah in the very beginning, literally according to some within the first few years of the Prophet's Risala, وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ وَإِذَا السُّحُفُ نُشِرَتْ. And so in Surah At-Takwir, when God is talking about the impending prolific event of the accountability of the Day of Judgment, talking to a people who never believed in a Day of Judgment. Not one of them believed in a Day of Judgment. And in the context of that, the one sin that he mentions is burying a baby girl alive. And so that became prohibited right then and there in the beginning of the Prophet ﷺ's mission. Women in the Qur'an are overtly, by the way, we could literally spend here all night about verses of the Bible that are misogynistic, patriarchal, demeaning, belittling to women. Okay? The Qur'an says, إِنِّي لَا أُضِيعُ عَمَلَ عَامِلٍ مِّنكُم مِّن ذَكَرٍ أَوْ أُنثَى بَعْضُكُم مِّن بَعْضٍ. God responded to the prayers, I will not allow any of your prayers to be lost. Whether you be male or female, it is the same because you are from the same thing. Each male and female from the same thing. As the Prophet said, إِنَّمَا النِّسَاءُ شِقَائِقُ الرِّجَالِ. Men and women are two halves of the same thing. Humanity. وَالْمُؤْمِنُونَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتُ بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ يَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ and so on. The believing men and the believing women, they are the allies, the guardians of each other. بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ. They are equally protecting each other and promoting right. and forbidding wrong amongst each other. They are praying together. They are giving zakat together. And they are living their life as believers together. That's how the ayah is pictured. وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. Generally speaking, all men and all women have the same rights. In the context of a household, the husband isn't a master to be obeyed in every idea that he brings forth, but he is a leader. He is someone that when it comes to a conflict about what we're going to do with this family and the responsibilities of the family as a whole, not what you should do in your life as my wife, as an individual, what opinions you should take. She's equally a human being on the same footing with you. But when we're making a decision about the family and this house and where we're going to go and what we're going to do and how we're going to make decisions collectively, if there is a disagreement, God put the responsibility on the husband. And again, listen to how it is understood properly. That responsibility of good leadership is on the husband. He will be asked about his decision. Was it arrogant and self-serving? Did he even consult with his wife? If he did not and he made the wrong decision, he will be counted as an oppressor on the Day of Judgment. It is not some dictatorial, divinely chosen authority of power over women. That's a biblical understanding. This is us being influenced by our colonizers again. Pay attention. And so we look in the idea of property and inheritance. In this country, the great America, women were not owning property and not inheriting by law until the 1900s. In the Qur'an it said, لِلرِّجَالِ نَصِيبٌ مِمَّا اكْتَسَبُوا وَلِلنِّسَاءِ نَصِيبٌ مِمَّا اكْتَسَبْنَ وَاسْأَلُوا اللَّهَ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. He put it mutasawi. If men are earning money, they earn their money and they own that property. If women earn money, they earn that money and they own that property. That was something completely different than what most of the world had. Similarly, لِلرِّجَالِ نَصِيبٌ مِمَّا تَرَكَ الْوَالِدَانِ وَالْأَقْرَبُونَ وَلِلنِّسَاءِ نَصِيبٌ. Men and women will both inherit. Now somebody will tell you, but in Islam, women inherit half of men. That is simply not true. There is a situation in which some women will inherit half of their counterpart from the same category. But there are many cases in which some person dies and women will inherit more than men in that inheritance. It is not a general ruling. It's if you have a brother and a sister, a son and a daughter, a mother and a father. If you have two from the same category, then men are inheriting double. Why? Because a woman in Islam is never responsible for a penny in her life. Pay attention, brothers. I know some of you came to America and now I'm sharing the bank account with my wife now. La taqillah ya rajul. She has her money and she has a right over your money. This is pure Islam. And so we can never ask from any of our wife's money. If she's earning money, if she has her mahar money saved up or whatever, family, gold, whatever, that's her business. That cannot be included. As a man, I would never ask for that. If my daughter is coming up, I can never ask her, you need to work to pay bills. But when my son gets 15, he's going to work and pay some bills. He needs to learn the ropes. Yeah, get ready. Next year is coming. Freedom to choose the husband. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا يحل لكم أن ترثوا النساء كرها. Oh, you who believe, you cannot inherit a woman and take her in as your wife if she doesn't like it. And the Prophet on multiple occasions, when women came, because the custom was widespread in Eastern history, where there would be arranged marriages. Most of them were fine with it, and they understood and worked it out, and society and life, it was a normal cultural thing for them. But some were like, no, I don't like this guy. Why did you marry me to this guy? Look how those women felt empowered to come to the Prophet and say, yeah, my father told me I'm married to this guy. I never even met the guy. I'm not too shabby on him. And the Prophet said, okay, you need to ask your daughter. And then he said, if your daughter has been married, then she will say. If she's not, then if she doesn't oppose, and you tell her, then that's her sign of acceptance. And so the agency and consultation, وَأَمْرُهُمْ شُورَى بَيْنَهُمْ. The affairs of the believers, all of them, are taken by consultation. And that is something we saw the Prophet ﷺ is above all of us. And Allah is commanding him to consult with us when he's making a decision that isn't about just like religion and its teachings, but more like a political or strategic issue that has human affairs in it. So the Prophet ﷺ did that, and on multiple occasions, the Prophet ﷺ took the opinion of Sahaba, and on a couple of occasions, he took the opinion of his wife over his original opinion. That's recorded in Hadith. Where are we at on this one? So I'll just leave you with this point. 25 years after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, when Uthman bin Affan radiallahu ta'ala anhu was assassinated, it was a big fitna. And at that moment, Aisha said, we are going to bring these people to justice. At that time, Ali ibn Abi Talib had been accepted as the default Khalifa. The Muslims were all generally in agreement, Ali will be our leader. He is now the Khalifa. Aisha said, hold on, brother. I'm going to go figure out who these people did. And she started calling people to gather an army to go find out who it was that assassinated and bring them to justice. And Ali told her, don't do that. And what does she do? I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And many companions of the Prophet ﷺ and many grown men followed her as the leader of this army, as the leader of this political decision. The only place in the Qur'an where a leader is praised for a head of state decision is who? Malikat Saba. But Fir'aun and all the rest of the men are blamed for their oppressive, corrupt, evil behaviors. The only one praised in the Qur'an for good leadership as a head of state is the Queen of Sheba. And so Aisha did that. Now she lost the battle, and maybe she had the wrong opinion. Allah knows best, He will judge between them. But they all did not see any problem following her. Similarly, they are now saying, okay, maybe Kamala Harris will be the president. There have been 12 women in 9 different countries who have been prime ministers and head states of Muslim countries. And they try to make you believe ideas about Islam and women that just simply don't add up to the facts. It's crucial for us to own these truths and be very confident and comfortable engaging people. And instead of waiting for somebody to start asking you, is Islam terrorism? Does it oppress women? You're out there promoting what Islam is before, so that they don't have to ask that question. That they will never think to ask that question because it's absurd. May Allah guide us with the Qur'an, and may the Qur'an be a witness for us and not against us. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalam ala al-mab'uthi rahmatan lil alameen. Continuing in the miraculous legislation of the Qur'an, in which the Qur'an singled itself out in human history as the only document that established guidelines and parameters for what the rest of the world was not ready for and was not able to accomplish. So we're talking about the wondrous Qur'an and how it legislates justice, behavior that creates a fairness and equity, a sense of equality, a sense of mutual respect, a sense of legal guarantee of freedom and rights and preservation of people's treatment in the best. Who could tell me what is the most consequential verse of the Holy Qur'an, because we've talked about it before, inshallah, when it comes to Islamic law? Because, okay, what's Sharia? The first ayah comes up is إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكُمْ بِالْعَدْلِ وَالْإِحْسَانِ وَإِيتَاءِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى وَيَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنكَرِ وَالْبَغْيِ يَعِظُكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَذَكَّرُونَ. So he says, truly God commands to justice. God is commanding justice, is the beginning fundamental command of divine law. After that, people can learn to excel and go beyond and have ihsan, to sacrifice their rights for others, to go out of their way so that others could have, even whenever they have a right. But first, justice has to be established. Otherwise, how could you expect anybody to go beyond justice? And preserving the family bonds and connections and rights. In the Qur'an, it talks about what is the purpose of the prophets. Why were prophets even sent? Our our worldview of prophethood and revelation. وَلَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا رُسُلَنَا بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ وَأَنزَلْنَا مَعَهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْمِيزَانَ لِيَقُومَ النَّاسُ بِالْقِسْطِ. We sent the messengers, and the messengers came with the scriptures, and the scriptures came with the clear understanding of right and wrong and how to balance your life, and they were sent to establish fairness and just dealing. So the word qist in Arabic, it means a just decision-making process, right? Adl is the system of justice. It is the judgment that is informed by qist. Qist is the, how should I take care of this according to Islam? How should I treat this person and make them feel comfortable? That's qist, right? Weighing out the proper assessment and making sure it's done right. Adl is that people generally feel like they've been treated right, and there is a standard of justice. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكُمْ أَن تُؤَدُّوا الْأَمَانَاتِ إِلَىٰ أَهْلِهَا. Truly God is commanding you to fulfill the trusts to their proper owners. وَإِذَا حَكَمْتُمْ بَيْنَ النَّاسِ أَن تَحْكُمُوا بِالْعَدْلِ. And if you're going to make judgments between people, make sure that you understand the obligation to establish justice. So before justice, people have to feel a sense of responsibility of the rights of others. تُؤَدُّوا الْأَمَانَاتِ إِلَىٰ أَهْلِهَا. So he's giving you the proper frame of mind so that you don't feel this burden of being fair without having a system to achieve it. A lot of people who follow other religions say, well, there's some good teachings. We all know you should love your parents and respect them and be good to the poor. But outside of the good deeds that every common, even the atheist humanist would agree upon, they don't have really a system, a philosophy of living, a philosophy of understanding divine law. As we said, وَإِذَا قُلْتُمْ فَعْدِلُوا وَلَوْ كَانَ ذَا قُرْبَى. If you're going to speak, make sure you speak with justice. Make sure what you say is understanding Islam and understanding people's rights, and that you are speaking on that. Even if it be against your own close family. And here's where Muslims have strayed, obviously. Because the tribalism and the nationalism will make somebody defend their family member or defend the people of their country when they know they're wrong, but they don't want to look like they're going against the grain. This is completely unacceptable. So Harvard University ranks the 4th university in the international ranking. All of the people of the University of the world took all of the statistics and what people do and what people become when they leave these universities. They said Harvard University is number 4 in the world. Harvard University had a project they put together in the law department. The faculty of law said, okay, this was back I think 2012, they said let's gather as many quotes from international treatises on rights, and let's pick and vote 3 quotes that we'll put over on the entrance door to the library of the faculty of law. Okay? So they gathered all of these quotes from all over the world and all these different religious and philosophical and so forth. And they came with 3 quotes that they voted are the best. And one of those was Surah An-Nisa, verse number 135. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين بالقسط شهداء لله ولو على أنفسكم أو الوالدين والأقربين إن يكن غنيا أو فقيرا فالله أولى بهما. So the ayah says, O you who have claimed faith, you must be firm and standing up for justice as witnesses to God, even if it be against yourselves, against your parents, against your family members, whether they are poor or rich, know that God will take care of them. You just have to say the truth. It is not your job to deviate for what you think will be getting you on the good side of those that are wealthy, or feeling guilty about someone who's poor, but yet they've done a crime, so now you will not speak the truth, right? And then it says, do not follow the desires of people, lest you go astray. And God is always aware of what you are doing. And so they said that this, along with one quote from the Magna Carta and one quote from St. Augustine's writing on humanity, those were the 3 quotes they chose. Again, this is an illiterate man in the middle of the desert. Magna Carta is all of the Greek thinkers, the greatest philosophers came together and spent a lot of time putting together these ideas to bring this Italian, I think they were Italian, masterpiece of law. St. Augustine has read all of the scriptures and all of the Greek thought, and he has sat with and trained with all of the priests and all of the people, and he came up with his ideas. Again, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He is who he is because he is Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So we see in the Qur'an this notion of those who would kill, يَأْمُرُونَ يَقْتُلُونَ الَّذِينَ يَأْمُرُونَ بِالْقِسْطِ مِنَ النَّاسِ. That there were people who claimed scripture, but when they found somebody standing up for justice, they would kill them. And they would even kill prophets, as is mentioned in the Bible. So last but not least, Allah is talking about who are the believers. شَهِدَ اللَّهُ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا هُوَ وَالْمَلَائِكَةُ أُولُو الْعِلْمِ قَائِمًا بِالْقِسْطِ. If you know who God is and you're testifying to His oneness and you're promoting the truth of God, then you will be known for justice, even-handed dealing, equity, fairness, self-accountability, tribe accountability, holistic accountability. This is something that we saw in our texts. We have seen it. When those people came up and did it right, the world was in awe, the people's society flourished. When they lost that, everything went down because the people have turned on the Holy Qur'an. Ya Allah, we ask you to strengthen us and empower us with the Holy Qur'an and make us the people who stand for justice. Bismillah. What did we talk about yesterday? Allah, very excellent. That's always a good default. Talked about justice. If you're not reading the Qur'an often, this is the month to begin that beautiful practice. Those of you that are reading the Qur'an often know that the concept of justice and being just and being fair and being equitable, it comes up hundreds of times. So even double the notion of justice is dhulm, oppression. This concept of dhulm is mentioned hundreds of times in the Qur'an. There is no other scripture in the history of humanity, no other religious teaching that emphasizes so much on the need for individual, familial, communal, and international justice, and to stand against individual, familial, communal, and international injustice. And that is something that is very profound about the Qur'an. Anyone who read, and I highly, if you have not read Ali Sallabi, they've translated his masterpiece in Arabic, it's like 1,000 pages. It's the Seerah of Umar. I mean, we love the Prophet ﷺ and it's amazing, but I'm telling you, you read the Seerah, it will change your life. Umar became the greatest ruler history has ever known after the Prophet ﷺ, obviously. He was known as Al-Faruq, the one who distinguishes between right and wrong, establishes truth and justice, and falsehood and injustice get pushed aside. Why did he do that? Because the Qur'an defined itself as such. وَهَذَا كِتَابٌ مُصَدِّقٌ لِسَانًا عَرَبِيًّا لِيُنذِرَ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا وَبُشْرَى لِلْمُحْسِنِينَ. The Qur'an defines itself. This is a book, this is a scripture, confirming the revelations that came before it in a pure Arabic language for those who are listening. Its purpose is لِيُنذِرَ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا, to warn those who are doing oppression, to warn those who are oppressors, to warn the oppressors. That's the point of the book. And then it says, in the story of Abraham being chosen and made that great leader, قَالَ إِنِّي جَاعِلُكَ لِلنَّاسِ إِمَامًا. Allah told him, I'm making you a leader for all of humanity. Immediately, as we said with Solomon, he's thinking about future generations. He's thinking about maintaining this responsibility in his family. قَالَ وَمِن ذُرِّيَّتِي. What about my children and my children's children? Will they be leaders of humanity? قَالَ لَا يَنَالُ عَهْدِي الظَّالِمِينَ. I would never allow my covenant to be given to oppressors. What is an oppressor? Oppressor is when you use your power and your abilities to make life difficult from someone else who has no power to stop you. Like talking every time we want to start a lecture. Because you have the ability to be quiet and other people want you to. I want you to know that this is a form of dhulm. You're using your ability. This is how you should think as a believer. You are using your ability to make life difficult for people around you. Muslims tend not to take the Qur'an like this. That's why we have this problem with the parking and this and that and the other, being late to everything and so forth. We don't take the Qur'an seriously. We are dhulm on ourselves. We are oppressing ourselves, as the Qur'an says over and over. وَلَكِنْ كَانُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ يَظْلِمُونَ. They used to oppress themselves. We're doing the same thing. Then we oppress our family members. We oppress our community. And so the Qur'an says, وَاللَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّ الظَّالِمِينَ. God does not love the oppressors. So you should be very careful that God would not love you anymore. Am I doing something? Am I using my power, my abilities, my choices to make life difficult on someone else who cannot stop me from doing what I'm doing, who has no power to just stop me? And so this is the attitude of the believer. وَاللَّهُ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الظَّالِمِينَ. God will not guide those who are oppressors. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَظْلِمُ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ. He does not oppress one atom of anything. He describes how hostility is. What is hostility? Hostility is the desire to cause pain or harm or to limit someone. فَلَا عُدْوَانَ إِلَّا عَلَى الظَّالِمِينَ. There should never be any hostility from a believer, except in one case, against oppressors. You see? You thought I was just being sour on them. You see? It all comes from the Qur'an. It's a very serious mindset of taking this book in, and that's what made the Sahaba a very unique people in the world. They took every ayah seriously about the message that it represents. They didn't take it as information or holy books to kiss and put on their forehead, to touch and get barakah from. They took it as manhaj hayat, a way of living. And that changed the world. And it spread all over the world. That's why you see all these different shades and colors and linguistic backgrounds as we sit here today. It's because they stood for truth and justice and spread it in the world. And they stopped the oppressors. How many of you have the name Khan? Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You know where Khan comes from. This is Genghis Khan. They were the oppressors. Pay attention. They were the oppressors, came from Mongolia. They came and demolished the caliphate. They took over almost half, like a third of the caliphate. They took it over. And they piled mountains of dead bodies saying, this is what we do when somebody comes in our wake. They were very aggressive warriors with very strategic methods of fighting. Within 100 years of ruling over the Muslims, they realized that they're oppressors. And they realized they have no deen. And they realized that the proof is with these people. And they all came into Islam. And thus Khan is a very common name amongst Muslims. So now we take it to another level. لا يحب الله الجهر بالسوء من القول إلا من ظلم. Going back to our point here tonight on our little example. Allah does not like that you will say bad things people are doing unless someone is oppressing someone else. Someone is wronging other people. When they're doing that, you say, you're doing wrong. You should not do that. This should not be done. Don't do it. And if more people are like that, people will what? Stop doing things wrong and stop oppressing. But if everybody's concerned about what somebody will feel when I'm applying this ayah of the Qur'an, I mean, obviously you're not going to be, attack someone or call them names or cuss them out. But you will say, please stop doing that. That's not right. You shouldn't be doing that. We don't accept that. We're better. We're better than this. We're believers. If you keep telling people that when they're doing wrong, especially as the ayah is talking about to other people, they're making life difficult for other people, then people will feel a sense of shame to do that. But when people always feel worried about what other people would think whenever I tell them, then we are all complicit. And then it says, وَلَمْ انْتَصَرَ بَعْدَ ظُلْمِهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ لَيْسَ مَا عَلَيْهِمْ مِنْ سَبِيلٍ. Whoever is being oppressed and they fight back, you cannot charge them with a crime. No matter what they end up doing. If someone comes in here and starts attacking us and we fight him and kill him, we are not murderers. إِنَّمَا السَّبِيلُ عَلَى الَّذِينَ يَظْلِمُونَ النَّاسَ وَيَبْغُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ بِغَيْرِ الْحَقِّ. The law is against the oppressors. The retribution is against those who are causing the problem, the conflict. And that's a fundamental teaching of Islam. The whole concept of fighting wars in Islam. In Surah Al-Hajj, أُذِنَ لِلَّذِينَ يُقَاتِلُونَ بِأَنَّهُمْ ظُلِمُوا وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى نَصْرِهِمْ لَقَدِيرٌ. Permission is now being given. They had asked the Prophet in Mecca on multiple occasions, can we do some assassinations for what they're doing? He said, no. How about we form guerrilla warfare and we just start getting them from here and there? The Prophet ﷺ, now Allah is saying this is the beginning of when you can form a military and fight back. It says permission is being given to the believers to fight back because they were oppressed. And then it goes on to say, they were removed from their homelands. They were attacked for their faith and their religious belief without right. وَلَوْلَا دَفْعُ اللَّهِ النَّاسَ بَعْضَهُمْ بِبَعْضٍ لَهُدِّمَتْ صَوَامِعُ وَبِيعُ وَصَلَوَاتُ وَمَسَاجِدُ يُذْكَرُ فِيهَا اسْمُ اللَّهِ كَثِيرًا. Then Allah talks about why there should be a battle against people. He says, if one people don't check another, they will go destroying many temples, churches, and mosques where Allah's name is mentioned often. The fight was about what? Freedom of religion. Muslims were fighting in the world in what you're being taught in the Western curriculum as like they're just taking over. No, these nations were not allowing any Muslim to just come in there. This superimposition of today's modern world on that time back then is a big fat lie. It didn't exist. There was no such thing as democracy, freedom, human rights. As far as outside of Islam, everybody was oppressors. Everybody had their empire, they had their emperor, they tried to expand, they tried to take over, and if you dared come in there and challenge their empire, their emperor, and the religion that they come on, you will get yourself burnt at the stake. You will be hung. So there was no way to spread this religion. They are preventing the freedom of religion. Islam was saying, look, since you're oppressing people and not giving them their freedom, because when Muslims took over, what happened? We said, we'll kill you or you become Muslim. La, Allah said, La ikraha fid deen. There cannot be compulsion. أَفَتُكْرِهُ النَّاسَ حَتَّى يَكُونُوا مُؤْمِنِينَ. More than one ayah in the Qur'an is saying you cannot force religion on people. We are the only religion that have that context, that have that justice about we're opening the doors, futuhat, what they call them. Futuhat do not mean conquests. They mean openings. To open the door for freedom of people to see and appreciate Islam. If they so choose it, great. If not, we still have 40 million Arabs today who are Christian. I was very blown away. I went to Egypt when I was 2003. I'm a new student. And I'm going, mashallah, the Muslim land, there's 70 million Muslims and all of this. And I'm coming on the plane, I'm like, what are all these crosses doing here, man? I thought I left all that stuff. And then I was told by other people, they oppress those people over there. Guess who my landlord was? Owned the 8-story flats that I was living in. Christian guy. Oh, he's oppressed people over there. No, he's doing quite well like many of them. This is all big lies. We are the real victims in this world. And they flipped the thing around and made us out to be we are the oppressors. The game that they play. Those who win the wars, those who have the power, they do what? They write the history. They say, here's what you should believe. This is what the story really is. We are just good people with doves and white picket fences spreading peace and democracy in the world. And so it's crucial for us to own our teachings, to be strongly rooted and founded in these teachings. And we carry them with us wherever we go, and we touch people with the light of revelation. And I promise you, the more you allow yourself to shine that light, to bring out justice, to bring out truth, to stand up against oppressors, to stand up against those that are wronging people, the more you become comfortable with that, the more people will want to know what drives you. That's why whenever it talks about how you call people to Allah, وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا. هذه جملة حال. In Arabic, so who is better than one who would call to the path of God while working righteousness? Meaning, if you're just bothering people with religion and trying to convince them of religious beliefs and ideas, most people will think you're annoying and be like, leave me alone and get out of here. But if you are bringing things up because you're doing something good or you're removing something bad, and you bring up religion in that context, people will appreciate that your religion means something. وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. And don't try to hide that you're Muslim while doing it. You have to be proud and confident that I'm a Muslim. I have this book. I have this Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So may Allah give us the greatness of the Holy Qur'an, and may Allah make the Qur'an a witness for us and not against us, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Bismillah, hamidun wa salliyan wa ba'd. Just a couple of, inshallah, a few points here. How many of you are familiar with Sigmund Freud? Sigmund Freud? Call him the father of modern psychology, right? So there was, and so he wrote his things like the 1800s, late 1800s, I think he was. He came up with a model about the nature of the human psyche. And when you read the books of psychology and when you take your introduction, like high school psychology, you learn about the id and the ego and the superego, right? Yeah. So the way Sigmund Freud, after looking into all of the advancements of human mind and research and the enlightenment of Europe and all of the great things that they have to offer, he said, you know, the id is just like the basic animal self. I desire this thing and I'm going after it. And I'm not thinking about consequences. I just want what I want now, for me, right? So this one is not thinking about its place in the world. And then he says the ego is where a person is now maturing in dealing with the world around them, and they realize they're part of a society, and they realize that if I'm going to succeed, I need to understand how to deal with other people, right? How to act in the right situation and how to respond to certain engagements. And then he said the superego is where someone becomes this altruist. They're just enjoying to do things for others, even when it limits their own value and their own purpose and their own interests. They just are out trying to help other people. They're just out feeling that. So, long time ago, there was an Imam, al-Baqilani. He wrote about psychology, but our understanding is that spirituality informs psychology, and psychology can suppress spirituality. You see? There is a struggle between the soul and the body. And so if the soul's in control, then the mind will be in good shape. Right? But sometimes things can happen and there was no methods of the soul there to help deal with it, or proper understanding of the methods, or no superstitious ideas around the proper methods. Right? And so then that creates certain mental illnesses and things like that, in which people are saying, spiritually, I want to do this and this, but there's something in their mind going on. So, Imam al-Baqilani said, in the Qur'an, you guys know the story of Joseph, right? Prophet Joseph, peace and blessings be upon him. The wife of Aziz, she was very much attracted to him. He is a very handsome man. And so she went after him, right? And some of the women blamed her for being some woman out of her control, because usually it works the other way around. Men pursue women. And she said, you guys come and see. I want you to see this young man, and then you tell me. And what did they do? He walked in and they're like, you know, they cut their fingers because they're too busy looking at him in awe. And so this is a nafs al-ammaratun bisu. The basic reality is myself will do things because of what it wants that harms myself and other people. But I'm not able to see that for some reason, because that's the base self. This was said 700 years, 800 years before Freud said anything from the Qur'an. Okay? Going back to the Qur'an and what it represents. And so then the scholars said, well, you know, in Surah Al-Qiyamah, in the very beginning, where it talks about a person thinking that there's a day of judgment, and the things I do and say, I'm going to be held accountable. So now, uqsimu bin nafs al-lawwama. I swear by the self-blaming soul, one who's accounting oneself, thinking, you know, should I have said that? Maybe I should do this and not that. You know what? I was wrong. I should not have done that. You know, that mindset, taking account of oneself. So this is the next step, where you're now going out of that animalistic desire and you're seeing consequences. You see? And then the third is a nafs al-mutma'inna, comes in Surah Al-Fajr. And it comes at the end of overcoming the tyranny of society by being an altruist. Look, it's saying that you need to be, don't blame the rulers who are corrupt. What are you doing? كَلَّا بَلْ لَا تُكْرِمُونَ الْيَتِيمِ. Worry about Fir'aun and all of them. What about you? Allah is saying. Okay? And so then, after telling this story about rejecting the self and supporting what is good and not being attached to one's wealth, then he says, Ya ayyatuha nafsul mutma'inna. The one who died and they were living as an altruist. See, the goal of Islam is to create altruists. What is an altruist? Someone who is seeking to do good to others, service to the world, caring for the welfare of other people, especially, first and foremost, the weak, those that are poor, disadvantaged, marginalized, mistreated, abused. We have to go save those people and uplift them and make their life better. This is the fundamental objective, because that is the divine point. If you look at all Asma al-Husna, out of all of them that you know, you'll find most of them are some element of taking care of people and taking care of others and being nice and understanding and dealing with things in a good way that makes the world a better place. And so this we see that our values that we have from the Holy Qur'an preceded all of this modern advancement of Europe. I'm going to throw out there, maybe somebody had heard about this from us and slipped it into their own thing and owned it. And this is what we're seeing on a massive scale whenever you really look at it. Like, for example, those things that are very consequentially valuable that are written in the Constitution, you will find those things were already in the Sharia, right? Now, why are we having this disconnect? Because for hundreds of years, the Muslim community has no leadership. They're not cavorting leadership. So without that, we don't know our history. We don't really know our values. We just know routines and rules for the sake of rules. We're supposed to do these worships. Why do you do that? I don't know. I saw my uncle doing it. Sheikh said so. This is what we do. We have to intellectualize spirituality. Imam al-Muhasibi, who was in the 130th year Hijrah, so he's now 1300 years ago. He wrote a book, and in the beginning of his book, his book was about a comprehensive moral understanding, right? And it's called Risalat al-Mustarshidin, the treatise for the seekers of guidance. Actually, Imam Zayd Shakir did a brilliant translation of this in commentary. Okay, but he begins by opening up with your explanation of the fundamentals of Bismillah, Alhamdulillah, La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah. Then he goes into Li'ul al-Albab. And he highlights that the true believer is an intellectual. The believer, this is the tabi'een. This is the mindset of those early people. That the believer intellectualizes their spirituality. And when being spiritually, they do it as an intellectual person. And that whenever they are learning about things in the sciences, they're thinking about it in terms of divine truth. And that is how they see everything. And so when we're like this, we will succeed. And so this is the goal that we need to have in ourselves and in our community, to uplift and revive this lost element of what it means to be Muslim. Jazakumullahu khairan. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. In continuing in talking about the miraculous nature of the Qur'an as a standout text in human history that emphasizes the legislation of various types of knowledge that no other text in history, especially religious texts, ever gave such attention to such things. Today we're going to talk about the upliftment and the empowerment of the intellect as a fundamental Quranic trait, as a fundamental Islamic theological concept. So when we look at the story of Adam and the very beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah, so Allah has in the beginning of Baqarah answered the fundamental prayer, guide us to the straight path. Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim, dhalika al-kitab. Here it is. And then He shows us what it means to be a pious believer. That's one category. Then He gives us a few ayahs. What does it mean to be a rejecter, a disbeliever? And then He gives us 16 ayahs. What is the confused state of hypocrisy, faith and disbelief, desires and doubts? Then He comes talking about His evidence for Him being the Lord of the universe. Then He tells us our story. And he says, I have put Adam, the human being, on this earth as an authoritative leader, one that will have the means to have rule over this earth on his behalf. And what was the one quality that made him stand out? Because the angels were very concerned. We're going to put this guy, he's going to shed blood and cause corruption and all of this. It says, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا, right? So then he taught Adam this intellectualization, عَلَّمَهُ الْبَيَانِ. The human being has this natural propensity for creative intellectualizing of things, expressing things in deep form of linguistics, not just words, but we can draw things, we can use hands and make things, and people will understand whole languages from what we do with our fingers. And this is something that makes us special as human beings. So from the Quranic mind frame, the worldview, what makes us special is intellectualizing our purpose in this world. One of the most common phrases that comes up in the Qur'an, it comes up over 50 times. I was actually very surprised when I found this. وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. This phrase comes over and over and over. Most people don't know. Meaning what? They've fallen from grace. إِنَّهُ كَانَ ظَلُومًا جَهُولًا. The human being took on this responsibility of choosing to do the right thing. But in doing that, humans have failed time and time again by dhulm, by using their abilities to belittle and take away from the rights of others, and by being ignorant and not being a person of knowledge. Which is why Allah says, هَلْ يَسْتَوِ الَّذِينَ يَعْلَمُونَ وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ إِنَّمَا يَتَذَكَّرُ أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. So he says, should the people that know be treated like those who don't know? Only those who intellectualize reality, and that's who they are, ulul albab. The people who possess this intellectualization of things, they will know the difference. People who don't know, actually, they don't know what it means to know. You see what I'm saying? So they don't see a difference. But once you do know in a field of study, right? Those of you, I'm sure many people here, have certain areas that you've specialized in. When you have spent, they say 10,000 hours. Even when you've spent 2,000 hours in a specific category of knowledge, when you hear other people talking like they know something, you're like, you know what I'm saying? So that is what Allah is talking about here. And that goes in everything. And then Allah told us about our status. What will make us better than someone else? يَرْفَعِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ دَرَجَاتٍ. Allah will raise in degrees above others those who have faith among you, but also those who have knowledge with their faith. And at the time being, and for some centuries, that is the struggle with the Muslim Ummah, is that we focused on ritualistic blind following in religion, and we did not seek to innovate and grow in the sciences of the natural world. And so we have fallen down to where we're at because we have left this point. Our leaders didn't care because their thing was about power and money. And then other people that sought power over them maintained their power and money for them as remote control efforts to make sure that Muslims don't become these intellectual spiritual beings again. And so we know from the very beginning, اقرأ بِاسْمِ رَبِّكَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ. We all take it for granted that, okay, the first ayah revealed to the Prophet ﷺ, read in the name of your Lord who created everything, right? But you have to remember, neither the Prophet ﷺ can read, which is why he was very confused in that situation. Number one, I've never seen such a guy looking like this. And number two, he keeps emphasizing read, and I'm like, I don't know how to read. And all of the people whom now he's sharing this to, except for a few, do not read. But what it's doing is telling them the beginning of a civilization of faith is going to start with reading. وَفَوْقَ كُلِّ ذِي عِلْمٍ عَلِيمٍ. And never think you know everything, no matter what knowledge you're in. There's always something new to learn. As Allah says, وَفَوْقَ كُلِّ ذِي عِلْمٍ. Anyone who has the most amount of knowledge you can imagine, there's someone else you didn't know has more. And as the Prophet ﷺ commented on this, رُبَّ حَامِلِ فِقٍ إِلَى مَنْ هُوَ أَفْقَهْ مِنْ. right? You will find some person is carrying some way of understanding something, but if they're only open-minded enough to know that the person I'm talking to, maybe they're younger than me, maybe they're not as specialized with the piece of paper that I have in my category, they have something to offer that I did not know. So this cultivation of humility and the desire, وَقُلْ رَبِّ زِدْنِي عِلْمًا, the only thing the Prophet was told to ask more of in the entire Qur'an, Allah said, Muhammad, ask for more knowledge. Right? And we saw Moses, when he thought he knew, and the whole story of Khidr is about learning you don't understand the complexities of what's going on. You have some knowledge, but this other person who's not in your role on the earth has more knowledge. And that's the same concept here. There is no scripture, there is no other, do not take Islam for granted. Don't just be like, okay, this is the Qur'an, I kiss it, it's holy, and then go on about your day. The Qur'an is profoundly, miraculously unique amongst all scriptures in the history of humanity, in every way we've been talking about for the last 14 days. Okay? And in this category, there is no other scripture that emphasizes intellectualizing. لِقَوْمِ يَعْقِلُونَ لِقَوْمِ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ لِقَوْمِ يَذَّكَّرُونَ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ لِأُولِي الْأَبْصَارِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَفْقَهُونَ لِقَوْمِ يَفْقَهُونَ. There are so many different ways Allah is saying that this message is supposed to make you more intellectual. A believer should be intellectual, not the mashayikh and scholars, not the scientists, and so we just follow both of them blindly. That's not the Quranic mindset. That is the broke down leadership you were raised under if you're thinking like that. We are supposed to be the intellectuals of the world. And in the process of that, Allah gives us methodology, the scientific method. وَإِن جَاءَكُمْ فَاسِقٌ بِنَبَإٍ فَتَبَيَّنُوا أَن تُصِيبُوا قَوْمًا بِجَهَالَةٍ. You see, so Allah's teaching you the methodology. He's saying if someone who has the potentiality of themselves being a person who is not ethically or morally upright, or the person that's telling them what they know themselves are not ethically or more upright, before you just accept what they tell you, and before you pass it on to someone else, go back and research and make sure that what they are saying is correct. Otherwise, your ignorance will cause harm to other people. You see, Allah is teaching a methodology of how to actualize knowledge. وَإِن تُطِعْ أَكْثَرَ مَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ يُضِلُّوكَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. Right? إِيَّتَّبِعُونَ إِلَّا الظَّنَّ وَإِنْهُمْ إِلَّا يَخْرُصُونَ. So the Qur'an tells us, if you just follow most people on earth, they will mislead you. Most people are only following assumptions and suspicions, and they guess at what they're talking about. They really don't have solid knowledge. They're just going by what someone else said. They're going what the book says. We are raised in schools to believe that books are like some holy reservoir in school that could never be questioned. And in many places they tell you, memorize what's in this book, as though the person wrote it is Allah. You see what I'm saying? And that is simply not true. Throughout our history, we were a people who had a methodology that stood out. So if you look at our history, you will find that it is Muslims that codified and made the science of algebra. The complexity of geometry, which is called trigonometry, that cosine, tangent, those are all Muslim scholars of mathematics that fleshed out these sciences. They used to have something called alchemy. Alchemy was, putting some potions together and hit or miss, see what happens. A lot of experimentation. The first people as a people who were isolating certain elements in building what is now called chemistry was Muslims. These glasses and these microscopes that we are using, it was Muslims that figured out optics and started to put the measure of how do you bend glass and things in order to make a better optic capacity and a more refined way of seeing that. In terms of many engineering and many medical procedures, that was happening in a caliphate under a theocratic Islamic rule in Baghdad, in Andalus, in Turkey, in Persia, in Africa. These things were happening. And I'm saying right now, if these were not highlighted with importance in the school you were raised in, you have to ask yourself why. Right? If you didn't learn those things about who did what and what their name was and how they were Muslim and how many of these people wrote books in astronomy and mathematics, and they also wrote books on Islamic jurisprudence and creed and philosophy, at the same time they were seeing it as being a Muslim and being scientific is one and the same, because I'm getting closer to the Khaliq. the Creator, who is the one who organizes and maintains things according to the systems He created. I'm simply learning. At the same time, while we were doing that, the Christians were in the Dark Ages. And if you dared talk about, I'm going to figure out science, you would be burnt at the stake or hung by the Christians, because the Bible tells us everything we need to know. Sound familiar? We don't need that science. Those scientists, the Bible has everything. We just believe in the Bible and follow it, whatever it says, and it knows everything about everything. That's the way they were talking. Now who's talking like that? You see? And so this is where we have to rethink where we came from and where we're going through the lens of the Quranic teachings. That is our guide. Some people say, well, we need, the West to modernize us. No, you people saying that didn't ever even learn anything about the Qur'an, and now you're just throwing out something that you culturally affiliate with without even knowing that you had the golden truth right under your nose under the whole time. But because you were not cultivated in an intellectualizing environment while you were raised, you're looking at these people seem more advanced, more organized, more rights, and so you're thinking maybe they know better than we do. When what has happened is we have lost our way. Well, the last ayah I want to mention is وَإِذَا سَمِعُوا اللَّغْوَ أَعْرَضُوا عَنْهُ وَقَالُوا لَنَا أَعْمَالُنَا وَلَكُمْ أَعْمَالُكُمْ سَلَامٌ عَلَيْكُمْ لَا نَبْتَغِي الْجَاهِلِينَ. If people that are believers, Allah is describing the way of a believer. If you're around people that are just yapping around talking about, yeah, whatever, F and this and that, those people and whatever, and the sports and the hot girl and whatever, the believer says, no, I don't have any time to waste with you guys. I'm going to go somewhere else. I have my deeds, you have your deeds. I'm a person preparing for eternity. I'm a person who wants to use my time wisely and be intellectual and understand things from a moral lens. I'm not going to just sit here and waste my time away talking about nothing. That's the way of the believer. That is the mentality of the believer. And so we do not want to be among the ignorant. And last but not least is confirming what we said before. وَلَا تَقْفُ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِعِلْمٍ. He read it in the second rak'ah. إِنَّ السَّمْعَ وَالْبَصَرَ وَالْفُؤَادَ كُلُّ أُولَٰئِكَ كَانَ عَنْهُ مَسْئُولًا. That don't go following or promoting something and you don't know what's the source of knowledge. Do not spread rumors. Do not claim, oh, I read on this, somebody said on YouTube. Okay, who is that person? What is their background? What is the basis? What is the foundation? What are the sources of what they're saying? That's the Muslim mindset. Not, oh, that sounds pretty cool. I'm going to spread that to everyone now. Or that sounds right. What do you mean sounds right? Based on what? So this scientific methodology, Imam Abu Hamid Ghazali talked about it. Ibn Taymiyyah talked about it. Ibn Rushd talked about it. What is now used across the board in science as the full model of scientific verification and analysis was something came from the Qur'an itself. The Greeks had ideas. The Greeks threw ideas around, and there are different ideas, but the methodology codified was something that was done by Muslims with those ideas, and they were guided by the Qur'an to do it. It was a spiritual impetus that led them to this. So it is for us as believers, success can only be and will only be that our spirituality drives us to intellectualize the world around us, and that our way of worship is something that is built upon knowledge that we know the sources. And when we do this, Allah has promised us, لَيُمَكِّنَنَّهُمْ. He will give you firm rooting in the world. So may Allah give us the best of the Qur'an and His teachings and keep us preserved in this life so that we may live in the hereafter with Him.